She stabbed my daughter in the stomach. In my own kitchen, while I wasn't home. When I kicked that door open and saw Sophia bleeding on the tile, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't ask questions. I grabbed Karen by the throat, slammed her into the fridge so hard the door caved in, then broke her arm across the counter and cuffed her with my own damn hands. She said she was just enforcing HOA rules. I showed her what real enforcement looks like, and that was only the beginning. Let me take you back to the day we moved into Pine Hollow, and the first time Patricia Wilcox knocked on my door with a smile like a knife. When I moved to Pine Hollow, I wasn't looking for perfection. Just quiet. Safety. A place where my daughter could roll outside without being stared at like a ghost. After losing my wife to cancer last winter, I had nothing left to give except what remained of me, for Sophia. She's 14. Bright. Brave. Born with spina bifida. She's used to metal braces, wheelchairs, and people pretending not to notice. But nothing, not the surgeries, not the pain, prepared her for what waited behind those marble driveways and smiling gates. The first day we arrived, the moving truck hadn't even finished backing into the driveway when she showed up. Patricia Wilcox. Silk scarf, clipboard, smile like a blade. "I'm the HOA president," she said, without waiting to be invited. "This neighborhood has standards." Her eyes locked on the blue handicap symbol I'd painted at the edge of our driveway for deliveries. "That's non-regulation paint. You'll need written approval for any exterior modification." "No welcome, no condolences, just control," I explained. "My daughter's disabled. It's to ensure medical vans can reach." "Everyone has challenges," she snapped, flipping through a thick rule binder. "But rules exist for a reason." I should have seen the warning signs, but grief has a way of blinding you, and all I cared about was making sure Sophia could get through a day without falling apart. So I smiled. I nodded. I said thank you. That was my first mistake, because this neighborhood didn't just have rules, it had rulers. And Patricia Wilcox didn't want compliance. She wanted submission, especially from a father with tired eyes and a daughter who needed ramps, not roses. I didn't know it yet, but the moment her heels clicked off my porch, we were at war. And it wouldn't end until blood hit the kitchen tile. By week 2, I realized Patricia didn't sleep. Or if she did, she dreamt in citations. At first, it was little things. A typed note duct taped to our door. "Your daughter's bird feeder is attracting undesirable wildlife. HOA Code 3.7. Next day, medical van parked for 17 minutes. The HOA limit is 15. Then came the real insult. "Wind chimes audible after 7 o'clock p.m. constitute noise pollution." The wind chimes Sophia picked out, the ones that helped her sleep. Each note ended the same. Patricia Wilcox, HOA president, followed by her phone number, and her email, and a condescending quote about neighborhood harmony. I crumpled the last one in my fist. She wasn't enforcing order. She was testing us, prodding, poking, waiting for a reaction. But I held it together, for Sophia. I removed the feeder, timed the van, took down the chimes. Each compromise twisted my gut, but I swallowed it, until the phone call started. Anonymous complaints to the county. They're running an illegal business from home. Too many visitors. It was Sophia's tutor. Once a week. Quiet as a mouse. Then someone reported we had an unauthorized pet. Our service dog. Rex. Legally protected. Federally approved. But that didn't stop the call. I stared at the report the county mailed. My jaw clenched so hard I heard something crack in my neck. I knew it was her. Couldn't prove it. But I knew. I marched up to her perfect white porch. Knocked once. Hard. She opened the door, already smiling. "Oh, Officer Reeves. Everything all right?" I cut her off. "Leave my daughter alone. I've let your petty games go, but this stops now." She tilted her head, smile curdling. "You people always play the victim card. Special treatment isn't fair to the rest of us." I stepped forward. "This isn't about fairness. It's about basic decency. Something you clearly lack." She didn't flinch. She thrived on confrontation. That night, Sophia cried in her room. "Why does she hate me, Dad? I'm trying so hard to be good." I didn't have the heart to say what I really thought, because Patricia Wilcox didn't hate Sophia. She feared her, feared what she represented, and like all cowards, she would rather destroy than coexist. Thursday started like any other. Sophia had caught a cold, nothing serious, just a low fever and fatigue. I told her to rest, made her soup, kissed her forehead. I would have stayed home, but duty called. An emergency briefing at county headquarters. Before I left, I checked the locks, gave her the landline, and told her, "If anything feels off, you call me. No hesitation." She nodded, bundled in her blanket, a cup of tea cradled in both hands. I almost stayed. Something itched at me, some primal warning, but I pushed it down. I shouldn't have. At 11:38 a.m., my phone buzzed. I answered immediately. Her voice was a whisper sharpened by fear. "Dad, she's here." My heart punched my ribs. "Who? Patricia? She's in the backyard, taking pictures. She says we violated interior regulations. Something about the curtain color." I was already grabbing my keys. "Stay away from the windows. Lock the doors. I'm on my way." Then, "She's knocking now." Pause. "She's yelling." And then, silence. No static. No goodbye. Just gone. "Sophia! Sophia!" Nothing. I felt my pulse explode. I didn't walk. I launched into my car. The world blurred. I didn't feel the steering wheel. I don't remember using my turn signal. All I heard was the last note in her voice. Terror. I blew through 3 red lights, veered onto the sidewalk once. I didn't care. I called 911, identified myself. Deputy Commissioner James Reeves, possible home invasion. Disabled minor inside. Suspect known, armed and dangerous. I wasn't guessing. I knew. Patricia Wilcox had finally dropped the mask. And this time, she hadn't come to talk. She'd come to hurt. Are you still watching? Be honest. If someone broke into your home and went after your child, would you wait for the cops? Type yes if you do exactly what I did. Type no if you think you could have held back. I took that corner on Ashwood at 50. Tires screamed. Gravel scattered like shrapnel. My heart wasn't just pounding, it was roaring. I reached the house in under 7 minutes. I didn't park. I didn't brake. I skidded into the driveway sideways, slammed the gear into park, and kicked the door open before the engine stopped turning. The front door, our front door, was hanging open, wide, like an invitation to hell. I ran inside. The first thing I saw wasn't her. It was blood, a smear on the floor, another on the cabinet handle, and then, God help me, Sophia, lying on her side by the kitchen island, hands clutching her stomach, lips trembling. Her eyes locked onto mine. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then I saw her, Patricia Wilcox, standing over my daughter with a carving knife still dripping red. "She lunged at me," she said, her voice eerily calm. "She was damaging property. She doesn't belong here." She turned slowly, eyes hollow, hair perfect, clothes spotless, except for the blood on her hand. Something inside me snapped. I charged. No hesitation, no restraint. I hit her like a freight train. My shoulder drove into her ribs, sending her sprawling across the floor. The knife clattered away, skidding under the table. "You put your hands on my daughter?" she screeched as I grabbed her wrist and slammed it against the tile. Once, twice. The sound of bone against floor made my stomach twist, but I didn't stop. She twisted, shrieked. "I'm the HOA president. I have emergency access. That girl is a liability. She makes us look—" I punched her across the jaw. She crashed into the lower cabinets, teeth rattling. I stepped forward and grabbed her by the collar, yanked her to her feet, and shoved her head first into the fridge door. The metal dented. Her head bounced back. She gasped. "You came into my home. You touched my child. You're done." She raised a trembling hand. You'll regret this. I have rights." "So does she," I growled. "And you just bought yourself hell." I dropped her to the ground and yanked the handcuffs off my belt. Her mascara was running. Her nose was bleeding. One heel had snapped, but I didn't care. I cuffed her hands behind her back, knee in her spine, her cheek pressed into the cold tile still wet with my daughter's blood. Just then, sirens. A patrol car skidded up behind mine. 2 officers burst in with guns drawn. They stopped cold when they saw the scene. "You good, sir?" one asked, eyes wide. "She stabbed my daughter," I said, without blinking. I secured the scene. They nodded. One helped me roll her limp body onto her side. The other checked on Sophia and called in medical. I sat beside my daughter, holding her hand, listening to her shallow breaths. Karen, Patricia, was still screaming behind me as they dragged her out. "This is a mistake. I own this neighborhood. That child is a parasite." The officer slammed the cruiser door shut, cutting her off mid-word. I looked down at Sophia. She squeezed my hand weakly. I couldn't speak. My throat was lava. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over. It was just the start. The hospital stank of antiseptic and despair. I sat there, hands still sticky with my daughter's blood, staring at the red streaks on my sleeves like they were written in a language only monsters could read. Sophia was in surgery for 3 hours. The blade had pierced her abdomen, missed vital organs by millimeters. The doctor called it miraculous. I called it rage with nowhere to go. Meanwhile, Karen was in holding, demanding a lawyer. Not for assault, not for trespassing. She wanted a lawyer for wrongful arrest. "I was executing my duties as HOA president," she told the officers. "Their interior decor is in violation of standard color palettes. The curtain was pink. It disrupts community cohesion." Pink. She stabbed my child over a goddamn curtain. The detective assigned to the case pulled me aside the next morning, eyes wide. "Sir, she doesn't even know who you are. She thought you were some single dad on disability." I laughed, cold, sharp. "So she didn't Google the man whose house she broke into?" "No, she just fixated on your daughter. Said she was a nuisance. Said you were too soft. That you were enabling weakness." I clenched my fists so hard my nails broke skin. Later that night, I stood by Sophia's bedside. Machines beeped. Her face was pale but peaceful. I brushed her hair back gently and whispered, "She didn't win, baby. Not even close." But inside, I burned. I didn't want revenge. I wanted wreckage. By the 3rd day, Karen's lawyer was begging for bail. Claimed she was a pillar of the community, that she posed no flight risk. But I'd submitted my security footage by then. Clear, high-res, time-stamped. Her voice on camera. "She doesn't belong here. She drags the whole neighborhood down." The judge denied bail. Karen screamed in the courtroom. "This is a setup. I'm the victim. That man assaulted me. I was doing my job." I stood up, slow and deliberate. "No, Patricia. Your job was to build a community. What you did was declare war." She lunged at me. Sheriffs tackled her mid-air. One cuff slipped. She spit at my feet. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about one house, one rule, one man. She didn't understand she had cracked the spine of something sacred, and now it was fighting back. I filed formal charges the next morning. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, breaking and entering attempted murder, hate crime enhancements for targeting a disabled minor, federal civil rights violations, abuse of power under HOA charter. But I didn't stop there. I launched a civil suit against the entire HOA board. Every member who signed off on giving her emergency access keys. Every name that looked the other way. Every resident who called my daughter a burden behind closed doors. This wasn't about punishment anymore. This was about correction. Because if someone like Patricia Wilcox could hide behind rules and bylaws to justify bleeding a child out in her own kitchen, then the system wasn't broken. It was weaponized, and I was going to burn the weapon down. 3 days after the hearing, my inbox exploded. Emails, voicemails, letters, some anonymous, others trembling with names they'd been too scared to say aloud for years. "She targeted my son. He's autistic. She called the cops when he flapped his hands in the yard. Karen said my daughter's wheelchair ramp was an eyesore and threatened us with fines until we moved. She shut down a birthday party for a cancer survivor because the balloons were too bright. Story after story. Different towns. Different HOAs. Same name. Patricia Wilcox. Turns out, Pine Hollow wasn't her first reign of terror. She'd chaired 3 other HOA boards before this one, each time leaving just before lawsuits landed. She knew exactly how to weaponize bylaws, how to frame cruelty as policy, how to smile while she bled people dry. The more I dug, the uglier it got. A woman in North Carolina sent me footage. Grainy, low res, but damning. Karen screaming at a man with Parkinson's for trembling too close to the mailbox, yelling at a deaf child who signed too animatedly, calling a neighborhood boy genetic trash for using a speech device. I couldn't breathe as I watched. And these weren't accidents. They were patterns. Karen didn't just enforce rules, she hunted difference. I compiled everything, created a digital dossier, names, footage, testimonies, medical reports, even HOA minutes where her voice could be heard laughing about fines. I brought it to the district attorney's office. They didn't blink. This isn't just one hate crime, the ADA said. This is a career of systemic discrimination. She's built her power on fear. Not anymore, I said. Now we flipped the script. I reached out to every family she'd scarred. Some were still scared. Others were ready to fight. One father, voice shaking, told me, "You think she'll actually face consequences this time?" I didn't hesitate. She won't just face them. She'll drown in them. Meanwhile, Karen sat in her cell, still barking at the guards, demanding better food, threatening lawsuits. One inmate said she tried to host a prison HOA meeting on her second night. She still didn't get it. She thought her past was buried. She thought fear would keep everyone quiet. But she didn't count on this. She didn't just stab my daughter. She stabbed a pressure valve. And now it's rupturing straight into her life. The media picked up the story next. I didn't go public. I didn't need to. They found the footage, the testimonies, the paper trail. And when the news anchor said her name on national television, Patricia Wilcox, once hailed as a model HOA president, is now facing a multi-state civil rights investigation. I sat by Sophia's bedside, held her hand, and smiled. She was still healing, still too pale, but her eyes lit up as she watched the screen. "That's her, right?" she asked. "Yeah, baby. That's her." She squeezed my hand gently. Good. By the end of the week, Karen wasn't a president. She wasn't a neighbor. She wasn't even a defendant anymore. She was an example, and I was just getting started. It was no longer just about Karen. Not anymore. She was the rot, yes. But someone gave her soil to grow in. Someone let her plant herself in the center of a community, hand her the keys to everyone's door, and call it leadership. That's who I was going after now. I filed the first motion with the Federal Civil Rights Division the same week the news story hit the national wires. I named Karen Wilcox. But I didn't stop there. I also named the HOA Board of Pine Hollow, the former president of Chestnut Valley HOA, 2 real estate developers who knowingly reappointed her after previous complaints, and the regional HOA charter office that had rubber-stamped every abuse as standard enforcement. Each of them had turned their heads while she weaponized bylaws like blades. Each of them had enabled her to build a paper throne on the broken backs of disabled children. And now, I was dragging every one of them into the light. The district attorney offered to help, but I didn't wait. I had my own team, lawyers who specialized in disability rights, advocates who'd been pushed aside for years. One of them, a mother of a nonverbal child, cried during our first meeting. "No one's ever done this," she whispered. "No one's ever gone after all of them." "Then let's make it count," I said. "Let's build something that can't be buried." Evidence flowed like floodwater. I didn't even have to dig. Former residents, ex-employees, HOA whistleblowers. One by one they stepped forward. Emails, voice recordings, letters with Karen's signature in thick red ink. One stood out, an email she sent after finding a family for a backyard ramp. "If we don't draw the line, they'll turn this place into a circus of wheelchairs and special needs parades." She wrote that. She meant it. I submitted it as Exhibit 12 in the civil suit. 3 weeks later, we stood in federal court. Sophia couldn't attend. Still healing. Still too weak. But I brought her bracelet, silver, with the word "strong" carved into the inside, and held it in my palm as I took the stand. The attorney for the HOA board tried to downplay everything. These were isolated incidents, miscommunications, administrative misunderstandings. I cut him off. No, these were calculated acts of cruelty masquerading as order, and you gave her the badge to do it. The judge let me speak, so I did. My daughter wasn't a nuisance. She wasn't a violation. She was a child, and your policies almost killed her. The room was silent when I finished. No coughing, no shuffling. Even the board members refused to meet my eyes. When we walked out of that courtroom, I knew the tide had turned. But it wasn't just about lawsuits. It was about building a wall so high that no one like Karen could ever climb back up again. I started working with legislators, drafting what we would call Sophia's Law, mandatory federal protections for disabled residents in HOA-governed communities. Legal limits on HOA access to private property, severe penalties for harassment disguised as enforcement, transparency in complaint handling and board appointments. It was slow, grueling, but I didn't stop. Because now I wasn't just a father. I was the firestorm they had created. And I was going to burn their fortress down brick by brick, until every child in every neighborhood could live without fear of being treated like a flaw in the system. Karen tried to file countersuits from jail. She claimed she was the real victim, that I had unleashed a vendetta, that her life was being destroyed. And maybe it was. But it wasn't revenge. It was consequence, and I wasn't done yet. Karen Wilcox used to walk through Pine Hollow like she owned the clouds, hair perfectly set, clipboard clutched like scripture. Every step sharp, deliberate, smug. She made people flinch, whisper, obey. Now, she sat in a courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, her platinum hair dull, her wrists cuffed to a plastic chair. And no one whispered anymore. They stared. The final hearing wasn't about her crimes. Those were already locked in. This was about damages, restitution, civil penalties, the financial cost of decades of hate disguised as policy. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, victims, parents, neighbors. Sophia was there too. Pale, but standing. Her braces shining in the light. Her hands steady on her wheels. She didn't blink once when Karen was brought in. Karen did. When the judge entered, Karen flinched. The silence was thick. The kind that only grows when the guilty finally realize no one's coming to save them. The charges were read aloud again. I watched her face shift, disbelief, panic, rage, over and over, like a storm trapped behind her eyes. "Mrs. Wilcox," the judge said, voice flat, "do you understand the consequences of your actions?" She tried to speak. She actually leaned forward. "Your Honor, I was enforcing the law. The community needed—" "No," the judge cut her off. "You twisted the law. You used power to isolate, to harm, and to violate the most vulnerable people under your care. This was not leadership, it was targeted cruelty." The sentence? She would serve 22 years without parole. And that wasn't the worst part for her. The worst part was the reparations order. All personal assets seized, properties liquidated, retirement account dismantled. Every dollar redirected to the victim's fund. She lost everything. The luxury car? Gone. The country club membership? Cancelled. The pristine home with the rose bushes she measured weekly? Auctioned. And when the judge announced that the HOA charter of Pine Hollow is hereby dissolved and placed under federal receivership, Karen screamed. Not cried. Screamed. Like something ancient and rotten was being dragged from her bones. They had to carry her out. She kicked, cursed, spat on the floor. "You're all parasites! You need people like me! This place is nothing without order!" No one responded. Even the guards didn't look at her. When the doors shut behind her, it felt like someone had exhaled for the first time in years. Outside, a woman touched my shoulder. Gray hair, gentle eyes. She fined us $500 for putting a teddy bear on our son's memorial bench, she whispered. I nodded. She's never doing that to anyone again. She nodded back, tears slipping down her cheeks. That night, I sat on the porch next to Sophia. The wind was soft. The stars were out. She held her charm bracelet in one hand. Her voice was quiet. Do you think it's over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, It'll never be completely over. But we ended her, and that's a start. She smiled. Not a big one, but the kind of smile you get when the air finally feels safe again. 6 months after the verdict, we threw a block party. Not the kind Karen used to organize, quiet, sterile, monitored like a military drill. No, this one was different. There were balloons, music, kids laughing so loud it echoed off the rooftops. Nobody cared about HOA codes or color palettes. No one measured lawn height or complained about wheelchair ramps. Sophia sat near the center of it all, wearing her favorite pink dress, the very shade Karen once called disruptive. Her legs rested gently in her chair, her smile calm but unshakable. And above her, wind chimes. Hers. The same ones Karen had forced us to take down a year ago. Now they hung proudly from our front porch, glinting in the sunlight, dancing to the breeze like they were born for it. People came by in waves. Some brought cookies, others brought apologies. One man, a former board member, stood stiffly by the fence before finally approaching. I should have spoken up, he said. Back then, when she started targeting your girl. I looked him in the eye. You didn't, but now you are. That matters more than silence ever will. He nodded, ashamed but grateful. Later that night, after the last guest left and the folding chairs were stacked, Sophia wheeled herself onto the porch beside me. We sat in silence, the kind that doesn't weigh on you anymore. She held a small bottle filled with glitter, beads, and colored water. Sensory bottle, she said. The twins moving in next door have autism. I thought I'd make them a gift. I looked at her. The scar on her stomach had faded, but the strength in her eyes had only deepened. That's a beautiful idea, I said. You think they'll like it? She smiled. They'll know they're welcome. That's enough. That night, I made the final entry in the journal I'd kept since the attack. It would soon become the foundation for Sophia's law, passed unanimously through state legislature, now being considered at the federal level. The last line I wrote was simple. Justice is not revenge. It's a world where she no longer has to explain herself to feel safe. Somewhere behind us, the wind chimes sang in the dark. Not a warning anymore. Not a violation. A celebration. And no one would ever silence them again. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It sounds like wind chimes dancing in the evening breeze. Like a child laughing freely on their front porch again. Like silence. Not because someone was silenced, but because the fear is finally gone. What happened to Sophia should have never happened to any child. And what Patricia Wilcox did wasn't just evil. It was methodical, disguised as structure, wrapped in paperwork, and buried beneath signatures. But here's the truth. Rules mean nothing if they serve cruelty. And power means nothing if it isn't used to protect the vulnerable. This wasn't just about one HOA president. It was about a system that allowed her to grow, and a father who refused to let it continue. Sophia's strength reminds us, you don't have to be loud to be brave. You just have to keep showing up, even when the world tells you you don't belong. So if you're watching this, and you've ever felt like someone tried to write you out of your own neighborhood, your own story, your own future, let this be your reminder. You're not the problem. You're not the burden. You are the line. And when someone crosses it, it's okay to push back. Hard. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe HOA rules have gone too far in some neighborhoods? Comment. Yes. If you've ever seen injustice disguised as order. Comment no. If you think most HOA systems still work well today. Your voice matters, and it helps others know they're not alone. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful true stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Because sometimes, one story can change how a community sees itself. And sometimes, one broken fridge door is the beginning of a better world.